Well, hello everyone and happy Monday. It is digital host A.J. Wuest welcoming you back to Before the Four, the live stream where I take you all through some of 48's top news stories and then some before our 4 o'clock newscast. Wherever you're watching Before the Four today, whether that is on Facebook, whether it's on YouTube or the 48 Now live stream, thank you so much for watching and spending just a little bit of your Monday afternoon here. Now let's start things off, and starting things off in Florence, where a man accused of assaulting 2 women at a Whataburger was recently arrested. Florence police say officers responded to the fast food establishment on Florence Boulevard regarding a sex offense call. Police say when officers arrived at the scene, they immediately found the suspect, identified as Adonis Bailey, who you're seeing on screen, and they took him into custody. Authorities say 2 female victims claimed Bailey entered the women's restroom and then attempted to take off their clothes. The female victims reportedly fought back and were able to escape. Now, Bailey was confronted as he left the bathroom and was kept from leaving the restaurant until officers arrived at the scene. He was booked into the Lauderdale County Detention Center and charged with first-degree sex abuse. And 48's Aria Pons will have more details on this situation coming up in our evening newscast. But now in Scottsboro, where an off-duty police officer was arrested for domestic violence today. Now, Scottsboro police, they say officers responded to a domestic dispute on Cherry Street around 1:30 this morning. After an investigation, officers arrested 32-year-old Patrick Pereira of Section and charged him with third-degree domestic violence. Pereira was booked into the Scottsboro City Jail. He's been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. And he's been with the department since 2020. 48 Savannah Sapp will have more details on this arrest coming up. In Decatur, a woman has now been charged with murder following a deadly stabbing incident Saturday night. Decatur police say the incident happened around 10:12 Saturday night after officers responded to a home off Noble Avenue for a reported stabbing. After officers arrived at the scene, they say they found a man identified as Marvin Wan suffering from an apparent stab wound. Police say he was transported to the hospital where he later died from his injuries. After an investigation, authorities say they determined that the victim's girlfriend, Alicia Alvarado, who you're seeing on screen, was the suspect. According to court documents, Alvarado was armed with a knife when officers arrived on scene. Officials say Alvarado was arrested and charged with murder. She was booked into the Morgan County Jail where she is being held without bond. And now a very, very tragic story out of Newmarket, where recently we learned that a former Buckhorn High School athlete tragically passed away in his sleep. Terrence Robinson was a member of Buckhorn's football team and a key player on the 2023 state championship winning basketball team. Coach Patrick Harding sent out a message Sunday night saying that Robinson will be remembered for his smile and joy for life. Robinson graduated in 2023. There's no word yet on the cause of his death, and my thoughts are certainly with that family and community. And 48's Carl Prather will have more on this situation coming up in our evening newscasts. But now a story in case you missed it out of Huntsville. As the city continues to grow at a rather rapid rate, 400 more acres have been added in Limestone County. 48's Noah Cowell tells us all about growth and land expansion in the area. Let's take a look.
Huntsville's newly annexed 394 acres border both I-65 and 565 on the southeast side, lying right next to Mooresville and near Mazda Toyota and Polaris. John Meredith oversees this area of Huntsville on the city council. He says this space will one day see residential, commercial, retail, and recreational spaces. He says we could see up to 4,000 homes and apartment units here in the next 10 to 20 years.
For lack of better expression, but not literally, every nail and screw that's there has been approved and is something that the city has signed off on.
Another member of the city council, Michelle Watkins, did not vote for expansion on Thursday. She expressed concerns about what this means for the school system. While a preschool through 8th grade school is set to open in this area in 2028, Meredith says Huntsville City Schools has no current plan for a high school, meaning families who move here would send their kids to Columbia High School, 20 minutes away on a very busy I-565.
Huntsville City Schools obviously needs to be engaged and involved in planning and construction of schools out there. I think as tight as the money is right now, I think that there's some opportunities for us to increase what we send down the pike to Huntsville City Schools for the construction of schools.
Well, thank you. And staying in Huntsville, NOAA also recently reported on 9 people now behind bars after authorities executed an operation to target online child predators. Noah Cowell on the recent Huntsville sting arrest.
9 suspects, who are all male, were arrested in the past 2 days. A Huntsville police spokesperson tells us these men planned to pay minors for sex and traveled to Huntsville to complete the transaction. But those minors turned out to be law enforcement officers pretending to be kids online. Most of the suspects are from Madison or Morgan County, but some came all the way from Texas or even Missouri to commit these horrible acts. Each alleged child predator is facing at least 1 count of first-degree human trafficking, traveling to meet a child for an unlawful sex act, and electronic solicitation of a child.
They're arresting and prosecuting these guys based on probable cause that they committed this crime. And it's ultimately going to be up to a jury to decide whether they did. And I believe we have good cases that will show that they did.
Covenant Rescue Group, based out of Gardendale, trained and advised the law enforcement the past 2 days, something the organization has done throughout the country for the past 6 years. CEO Jared Hudson says they aim to do more than just find and arrest these people.
Our goal is to teach agencies how not just to make a felony arrest, but also to work with the district attorney's offices to make sure we have a successful prosecution, because you have to have those 2 things in order to impact human trafficking here in the United States.
Well, thank you, Noah. Well, Alabama lawmakers are looking to prevent Chinese companies from buying U.S. farmland. 48's Nick Ballinger tells us all about their recent efforts.
Do you know your neighbor? Well, according to a report from the Department of Agriculture, it could be foreign investors. In fact, the report says China owns upwards of 380,000 acres of U.S. farmland.
We can't allow China to own 380,000 acres of U.S. soil. And where is this property located? It's located around our largest military bases.
Representative Dale Strong is reintroducing a bill that failed in the Senate last year, which prevents foreign investors from owning U.S. farmland. Senator Tommy Tuberville also reintroducing his own bill to add the Secretary of Agriculture to the Committee on Foreign Investments.
We cannot afford to give foreign adversaries a foot in the door to our critical ag supply chains or national intelligence.
But local cattle farmer Shane Southern's concerns are with his livelihood.
They've got a whole lot more money than most of us, so they can afford to do it. Well, we can't, so we just have to sit back and watch our land get dwindled down to nothing.
These concerns come as Southern say farmers are already struggling to get by. He says he's already had to buy more feed this year, $3,000 more, putting a strain on his checkbook. Southern says foreign investors will only drive up the price of land, essentially pricing local farmers out. He says leasing the land from these investors won't even be an option.
You're buying this land for $15,000 an acre, and you buy 100 acres, you ain't going to rent it to a farmer or a cattle farmer for $150 or $200 an acre.
Southern says buying more land would increase their yield, which means more money for American farmers.
If they don't have the land to put all their crops on, then they're not going to make any money. On the flip side of that, on the cattle side, if they're not making corn, beans, cottons, whatever on theirs, then I'm going to struggle coming up with a feed to feed my cattle.
Which could affect your prices at the grocery store.
Well, thank you, Nick. And now coming up after the break, we'll talk about one local Holocaust survivor today on Holocaust Remembrance Day, the latest in a bit of national news, and a couple down in Dothan giving birth at a donut shop. Find out where in just a bit. It is all ahead. I'll see you all in 1 minute. Well, hello and welcome back to Before the Four. Today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. Today marks 80 years since the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp in Poland. One Holocaust survivor living in Huntsville, Regina Dimbo, is a retired teacher who is now 98 years young. Dimbo and her two sisters were sent to the United States from Poland. Her mother and younger brother died in a Nazi concentration camp. Although she experienced so much loss in her life, she says she's happy to be in America. Take a listen.
It's a kind of weird feeling that you are not wanted, and you feel bad and you need to leave. And then you start hearing about all the bad things that are happening. And my mother was very careful about that.
It's a Southern hospitality.
Dimbo is one of about 40,000 Holocaust survivors still living in the United States. The retired teacher stays active by regularly working out at Huntsville Hospital Wellness Center. But now, in national politics, new fallout from President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration. Cities across the country seeing a dramatic rise in the arrests of undocumented immigrants. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is in Chicago with more.
This morning, President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration is ramping up in cities nationwide, including Los Angeles, Denver, and Chicago.
We immediately halted all illegal entry and began sending every border trespasser and violator back to the places from which they came.
His mass deportation plan now sparking an international standoff. Colombia, typically a close U.S. ally, turning away 2 American military aircraft with deportees. The country's president saying a migrant is not a criminal and should be treated with the dignity a human being deserves. Trump threatening Colombia with a 25% tariff on all Colombian goods coming to the U.S. and also demanding the U.S. visas of Colombian government officials be revoked. Colombia's leader then attacking Trump online, saying, "You will never dominate us." But later, the country reversing course, according to the White House, agreeing to all of President Trump's terms, including the unrestricted acceptance of migrants.
Good. The country needs to take back their citizens. We got a strong president that's going to demand action. If they don't act, then there'll be consequences.
In Chicago, Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, overseeing expanded operations to arrest undocumented immigrants. The Washington Post, citing 4 people with knowledge of ICE briefings, reports that the agency has set a quota of at least 1,200 to 1,500 arrests per day.
Is that what you're hoping for? Look, we want to get as many criminals as possible, so there's no number on it.
Overnight, ICE saying it made nearly 1,000 arrests nationwide on Sunday, the most so far. Since Trump's inauguration, the agency says it's taken more than 2,600 people into custody. Advocates worry undocumented immigrants with no violent records will be swept up too.
It's quite disturbing. They're going after people who are law-abiding, who are holding down jobs, who have families here, who may have been here for a decade or 2 decades, and they're often our neighbors and our friends.
And staying in national news, a major rainstorm is pounding Los Angeles right now, just as families return home after those devastating wildfires. Now, the threat of flooding and mudslides means some are being warned to be ready in case they need to evacuate again. Steve Patterson with the latest.
Tonight, after the most tragic trial by fire Southern California has ever faced, now a new threat: the rain. A major rainstorm expected to sit on top of the region until Monday will all but extinguish what remains of any flames. But in the burn-scarred hillsides of the Palisades, rain triggered this debris flow, cutting off roads for fear of landslides.
And as the water rushes underneath it, the foundation gets less and less stable.
Firefighters forced to pivot from fighting fire to fighting floods.
Our station is getting filled with water.
We met Palisades Fire Captain Eric Nakamaru as his crews worked to prevent his own station from going underwater.
They're pumping water out over here?
Yes, right now we're pumping the water out of the station. Parts of the station are flooded right now.
And the worry here is real. Experts say land moves about 7 times faster on a burn scar than on land with vegetation. And as you can see, much of this area is blackened.
The first heavy rain we get, we're very concerned.
Lisa Guerrero's Malibu home survived the fire, but she's worried about what could happen next.
There's a hill in front of us that's about to come down, and then there's a hill behind us that could come down on us.
Crews scrambling to build barriers around some of the worst hit areas, worried about toxic chemicals in the debris that could flow into nearby waterways, even the ocean. A flood of new concerns facing a community already living through the worst case scenario.
But now, in a bit of state news, a Dothan, Alabama family added a new member during this past week's winter storm, and it happened under the most unusual circumstances. Jacqueline Lambert with the story. Check this out.
Dallas Mitchell had quite the entrance.
I feel like Superwoman.
On Wednesday, the day after Dothan's historic snowfall, Shania began having contractions. So she and Keon, Dallas's father, braved the iced-over roads.
It definitely slowed us down, and he was driving, so I was scared. I was thinking he was going to start panicking and start driving faster, but he did very good.
With 911 on the phone, the family traveled towards Flowers Hospital, but they didn't make it.
I really don't even know how I stayed, cause I was really scared. I was scared too, but now I feel like I really could be a doctor now.
They got to an intersection a mile from Flowers Hospital where Dallas Mitchell refused to wait any longer.
I felt the baby had the red light, and so once we got into the Krispy Kreme parking lot, I couldn't stop pushing, and I just saw him sliding out, and I'm like, come grab him, come grab him.
By the time paramedics arrived, 5 pounds, 14 ounces Dallas had been born.
It's an experience to remember. It definitely is.
What an awesome story there. That is so cool. And honestly, who doesn't want to be, like, that is the best place to be born, I think, is a Krispy Kreme donut, a donut place, especially if the hot donut sign is on. You gotta love it. Get donuts right out of the womb, that is for sure. But now let's head into the stories you're just not gonna want to miss coming up in our evening newscast. In need of food for your pets? Find out how you can get some for free coming up in our evening newscast. Another story you're just not going to want to miss, a group of students in Marshall County winning a robotics competition. Get those details coming up. And finally, a look at the crawfish season ahead of Mardi Gras festivities. And these are just a few of the stories you're just not going to want to miss coming up in our evening newscast. And it is just about that time. What time is it? It is, of course, time for Facebook Fun and our 48 Facebook question of the day. Name one thing today's schools need more of. And let me tell you, you all had some really awesome comments, some really creative and thoughtful ideas on ways to improve our local schools. So I had a great time reading what you all had to say. I could have made this entire Before the Four today just looking at all of your comments. So you very much impressed me today. Unfortunately, I cannot share all of the comments, but let's take a look at a few of my favorites today. Let's see, Sarah said life skills, how to apply for jobs, paying bills. Those would be super awesome to implement at schools because, of course, you need to know everyday life skills once you do graduate, of course. So, Sarah, awesome comment there. Thank you so much for commenting. Carol said mental health professionals. Always a good idea, I would say. Carol, thank you so much for commenting. Chris said trade programs need to be normalized. Chris would like to see more trade options in schools and would also like to see them normalized. I agree with you, Chris. That is a very awesome one. Thank you so much for commenting. Valerie said outside play, especially in the younger grades. I agree. That was like one of my favorite things about elementary school growing up. Of course, recess, getting to go outside, run around, burn off some energy. You got to love that, and it's important for kids to have, absolutely. Valerie, I agree 100%. Thank you so much for commenting. And then Tim said nap time. And honestly, I think we need that, not just in schools, we need that in the workplace also. You gotta have nap time. I mean, come on, you need it. Tim, I agree 100%. We need nap time. And yeah, it's not just schools. But awesome comment there, Tim. Thank you so much for commenting. And everyone who commented on today's Before the 4 or the 48 Facebook question, thank you so much for commenting. And, you know, that is just about all she wrote for today's Before the 4. We're adjusting to a brand new computer back here, so I am definitely getting used to everything. But I'm excited. A lot of exciting things are coming. But I hope you all enjoyed tonight's evening newscast, whichever one you watch, whether it's the 4, the 5, the 6, the 10, or all of the above. Enjoyed tonight's evening newscast. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you download the 48 digital app, the 48 First Alert Weather app, and of course the 48 Sport Zone app. Turn on those push notifications and you will never miss a breaking news story. But with that said, that is all the time I have today. But as always, thank you for watching, and you all have a good night.